This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Erin. All right, folks. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, everybody, for popping into the chat with your name and where you're from. It's kind of fun to get a feeling for where people are. And let's see, we started the recording. So Lisa Triggs and I worked together on an outline for all things point ball. And we realized as we were making the outline that it's a lot. And so if we can't cover it all today, we'll have to have a part 2 because we really want this to be an interactive gathering. And we've actually got an open document going that we can edit it on the fly and add in ideas that people have through the course of the Clubhouse chat. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up a shared screen. And okay, let's see if I got this right. It looks good, I think. So here's the outline we came up with. Defining what point ball is, preparation exercises, getting started with getting into point position, getting started with pushing point, building on the clock game, combining positioning and pushing, building for a game and adding difficulty, and the many challenges that come up for point ball. So that is a basic outline of what we'll try to cover today. So first of all, I'll go ahead and define the point ball. So in the Nate formation-based games, the point ball is the farthest ball from the handler area. And it's important that our dogs learn a rock solid, confident point ball position and push because there are penalties for not pushing the point ball first and for not bringing the point ball in first. And it also can result in non-qualifying runs at the higher levels. So that is the, and anytime anybody wants to just jump in with a question or a thought or a comment, feel free. Anybody have any thoughts on the definition of point ball?
No, but I have a comment.
Yeah. Let me.
I find that even when my little Larson is doing a game and he's doing it really well, we go to a different formation or something changes. I'm not sure what that is. He'll oftentimes start losing confidence in where the point ball is, and we'll have to go back to these games and practice where the point ball is more often than I would expect. Oh, great. I can't hear anything now.
Oh, wait, here we go. Sorry. Lisa, can you hear me now?
Okay. Yay.
Yeah, there was a lot of
Yes.
feedback. You want to repeat that?
Yeah. It surprises me how difficult the point ball can be for some dogs, including my dog Larson, where if we're playing one game over and over, he's like, got it. As soon as that formation changes, he looks at me like, are we still doing the same thing? You know, I'll have to go back and practice, go, yeah, even with a different formation, we're doing the same thing. So it just surprises me how much I have to go back and remind him what his job is with that point ball when the context changes.
That's good. Thanks. All right. And then, well, why don't you just continue, Lisa, and talk a little bit about the preparation games. And I forgot to mention one thing. I'm going to try to play some video. And it might be a little choppy as an experiment to see how it works. So you can let us know with what your thoughts are about whether it was helpful or not helpful to play a little video. So we'll see how that goes. So talk about the first preparation game you like to play.
I'm hoping that others will chime in too and say, that's what I play, or no, we do other things too, because I'm going to share stuff that I know, but I am so happy to glean information from anyone else who has some fabulous ideas and thoughts. like Monica, I love to play the around the clock game, and I'll use that for whenever I'm adding more distance, a different formation, anything when the context changes, I'm playing my around the clock game again. And that's when you're at 6 o'clock. Um, your dog is kind of in the middle of the clock and the ball. So it's yourself, the ball, and then your dog. And you're throwing a treat out to 12 o'clock and you're asking your dog, can you come back to behind the point ball? The majority of the time, you're starting it off with some kind of target on the ground, whether that be a small target or a Kato board or, whatever works for your dog. 12 o'clock is usually the easiest for them. And then you start asking them to go to like 10 and 11 or 1 and 2. And you're basically asking them, can you come back to that target from these different angles? I'm looking to see what's next after that. Then I'm going to change that with, it's going to start with a single ball. I may send and orient with 2 stacked balls. I'm going to think about adding some distance. I'm going to, think about when can I take out my target. But I'm really asking my dog, what is your understanding when I'm throwing a treat at all these different points of the clock? 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock are going to be a lot harder. And then going further around the clock is going to make it even harder.
So Lisa, I have a question. I train the 12 o'clock game and I agree. I love it. It's a technique everyone can do. You only need a little bit of room. A couple minutes a night in your living room is fantastic, does wonders. So you were saying you train like the 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock positions. What do you do for those? Is that more towards urban herding, or because I always used it, the dog has to be on the opposite end of me?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I like how the clock is up now. If I'm the star there, and the red is the ball, and the dog is the little black square, I'm throwing a reset treat out to 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock, and asking my dog, do you understand that you're supposed to come back to this mat each time? And then you may get fed on the mat, but I'm going to throw another treat off of the mat to a different location on the clock. I'm talking about the treat goes to 3 or 9, and then you're asking your dog to go and get that treat and then come back to their target. You're going to go 4 and 8, 5 and 7. You're basically teaching them, no matter where I'm sending you from, whatever angle, I want you to go and find that opposite side of the ball from me.
Okay, I thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you were, so I understand you're saying you throw the cheat treat at the different positions. I do that as well, but what I do too is I will go over to the dog, reward, and then the dog has to send back out from where I was. Not sure if anyone else has any other additives they do for that.
So I do that too and add it. I'm adding lots of different things. I'm just right now talking about the easiest way to start is throwing it out at 12 and then working around the clock. And then you can add in a formation, you can add in ball substitutes, but just having the around the clock game as something that you do with your dog and practice and that they know, so that you can then change the context of how you play it and it's not brand new to their brains.
Got it. And I think Karen has a question.
Not so much a
Karen? Oh, I see the
question,
little hand.
just a comment. I am loving all this stuff and working Ticket and Jeep on it, and it's very helpful. Ticket had an exercise that he needed to do for one of his bedrock classes at our school, which was on a pivot board, and or a pivot, I don't know what bucket. So wherever I was standing, he had to be directly across from me with his paws on that. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's just like a feed
Absolutely.
bowl that's upside down. So he would always have to be across me, so I would move, 45 degrees, and he'd have to position himself. So that constant position, and I called it counter. So I'd tell him counter, and he'd, and move, and he'd move right across me. I think that helped him a lot once we started with Treibball for generalization, like, oh yeah, I should always be across.
Yeah, that's good.
And no, that's a great game to play. And there's a lot of varieties of how to do that game too.
There's a, excuse me, excuse me, terrible timing. There's a bridge game we kind of play along the same lines. Like again, this kind of around the clock game is a game I play as well at first, always to get them to come back to that point ball position. And then once we have that down, then we kind of switch it and we put the balls where the numbers are, and I stand in the middle. And now the dog lines up on the ball, and then I rotate, and the dog goes to the next ball, and I rotate. Kind of a very similar thing that we're talking about there. So just another adaptation. But it still always starts with the clock game. That orientation game is big. So
I like that a lot, the putting the balls in the positions of the clock. That's pretty cool.
Kyla.
I think Kyla had her hand up.
You said that you were starting out with the easiest, which I agree, this is easy, but I think there's one other step that people can take. And maybe you do this and you just didn't mention it, but the first thing I do is I just feed the position. I stand across from the dog and feed the position. This is the orientation that I want, food, 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 and then I start tossing. And then what I like about this game too is I will do it with a full formation of balls. And what I like about that is I'm lazy and I get the ball set up and I want to use it to train that point ball instead of always having the dog break the point and scatter the balls. So I'll get up fairly close to the formation and do the same game with the treat toss. I also have a treat toss that goes, behind the dog so that they go to 12 and then all the way around the formation. So just more repetition of that. So
Yeah,
I agree.
absolutely.
Awesome. And you know what is fabulous about this? We just started and everyone's already chiming in. I love it.
Let's see. Well, I'll talk a little bit about pushing strength. As a preparation. So these are some of the things I do just to help dogs get a little bit stronger push if need be. There's a lot of gentle pushers out there. And so I have graduated sizes of rings, or at home I use a rolled up towel, and I'm trying to really help the dog learn to have a stronger push and build confidence with the strength of their push so that they're ready when you're going to start to add the resistance of the ball bumping into other balls. So that's kind of, we had started just with, like, before you even think about the formation, these would be things you would do for preparation. And then any more ideas? Loved all the comments so far. Anybody, any last, like, preparation, like even before you bring out the formation that you want to add? We got everything? Okay. Then so we had our next step was the point position itself getting started. And I love what you said, Kyla, and I'm going to just add it right here. And it was just feed in position as your very first step. Right? Basically, you set up the formation, you just step there and you just feed, feed, feed. I love that. So Lisa, do you want to talk some more about the clock game for the once we brought the position in?
Here we go. So yeah, using a map to start. You can start with one ball and two objects. So you see in the picture there's a ball and two laundry baskets. It's not really important what objects you start with. I tend to start with objects that don't already have a lot of association with anything with them. So yeah, what do we use laundry baskets for other than Treibball? I tend to use crates. I don't tend to use cones because cones tell my dogs we're doing agility and we're wrapping stuff. So thinking of things that don't have all these preconceived associations with them. You're going to go really close to your balls. You're not going to do a cue at first because our dogs don't know a cue. So we don't tend to add in a cue until our dog is doing the behavior. Here's another one that I've seen over the years, that we as humans tend to love to get the dogs perfect behind the ball. And I'll tell you a quick little story. My very first Treibball dog, he insisted on laying down behind the ball. And it wasn't my favorite behavior because he couldn't see over it very well. So we had to modify things a little bit, but that was his default behavior. And he was very proudly assuming that position behind the balls. So he would always go a little to the side of the ball so that he could see me, but he still knew which ball he needed to get. So I had to get over myself and say, you don't need to be directly behind it because then you can't see me. And he kept on trying to tell me that nicely. And finally he was like, I'm just pushing it before you even tell me to. I know which ball it is. So pay attention to your dog and train the dog in front of you. My next dog was not like that at all. So we did things a little differently, but just because what we're telling you here, works for some dogs, it doesn't work for everyone. That's why we have our group and we get to share ideas and figure out new things together. So I'm saying avoid repositioning cues, meaning don't ask them a million times to move over a little or move over a little. Lots of times that deflates their confidence, and you can ruin your own point ball location. So instead, set up your environment so your dog can get it correct and try and build that pattern instead of repositioning them too many times. And as Kyla said, reward for holding the position. We want them to think that being behind the point ball is the best thing in the world. So make lots of happy rewards happen out there. Our dogs are already really good and know that getting rewards from our hands is fabulous. We're cookie machines, but bring the cookies to them. Make that position really positive.
All right, well, if anyone wants to jump in about the clock game, but I think we really covered the clock game pretty well already. People were chiming in. But Lisa had this great idea that I hadn't used before of using some kinds of gates to make the row 2 balls inaccessible. I got a little picture there that maybe you can see. And that was a really neat idea to just set your dog up for success.
And it was not my idea.
Okay.
I stole it from someone else.
And then we wanted to talk about feeding positions, because as soon as you start to add more balls, especially if they're an extra large dog, like it's kind of far to reach to feed in position. And so, depending on the dog, sometimes throwing a treat is okay. You're still rewarding in position if they can catch it. Sometimes a toss down onto the ground can work well, or sometimes stepping in and kind of moving the balls and getting your leg in there in order to feed in position. So those are just some ideas I had about feeding positions. So anybody have anything else to chime in around just the positioning for point ball? Not even adding push yet. We're separating out just the positioning.
So one thing I've seen sometimes, especially with feeding over the ball, is the dogs tend to creep up on the ball. So then instead of just sitting there, like the ball's constantly moving because they feel like they have to be on top of it, maybe just because they feel that way, or you're treating over the ball and they're trying to get closer.
Yeah, it all depends on your dog. Some will you give them an inch, they take a mile. In those cases, I tend to toss my treats behind them. if my dog is crowding too much. And, with my Shelties, they tend to not mean it, but they have all that chest hair and they're moving everything.
Yeah, I do
So
think
yeah,
it works.
throwing
Each dog
between
is
them is
different.
possible.
Oops.
Yeah, I think a marker signal works well here. So they're marked for being in position. And then, like Lisa, because Riley tended to be I want to push the ball. So I had to work harder to reinforce the staying behind, just being calm and waiting. And my cue that the treat's coming behind her is zombie. So I say zombie and I throw the treat behind her. So look out behind you. There's the treat.
Huh? Cute.
I've started to incorporate hand signals when my pup is in the position, because sometimes I think my voice is like white noise. It's like mum, 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 mum. So I will try to reduce that noise and include a hand signal, or something that is not related to another sport.
Nice. Well, maybe we're ready to look at pushing point. Does that sound good?
Actually, I
So
do have one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't
Go, Kyla.
sure where you were going with the formation of the balls, but I'm just now working with Ashton, the Springer that I have, and he was doing fine with the point ball and formation, just intermediate level. And all of a sudden he started having problems, and I was doing the usual review and it wasn't seeming to make sense. All I did is I moved the point ball just a little further away from the other balls, just like 12 inches instead of 6 inches. And he's like, got it. Okay. So
Ooh.
throwing that out there for you.
All right. Well, when we get to challenges, we're going to write that in there.
That's another technique I use, Kyla. Trying to make it like really obvious.
Nice. All right. Well, let's start looking at pushing. Getting started to push point. Let's see if I can share my screen again. All right, there we go. All right. So at first we're working with for the 12-inch space between balls for a pre-novice to make that's kind of like a first goal. But you're going to need, depending on your dog, have even more than 12 inches to get started, so that we're slowly increasing the resistance based on how comfortable your dog is using their head and nose. So Lisa has a fun game. I've never did this one with chairs. I work on grass, so I think it's a little bit different, but I'm going to try to play this video, and Lisa, you can talk us through your chair game. Let's see, start that. Okay, now, sorry, I've got a time problem. Go ahead and talk about it, Lisa, while this is coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I use whatever's around. So I don't use chairs at home in my grass field because I don't have chairs. But where I teach classes, there's lots of chairs for students. So one day I was like, let's just set up chairs for dogs to have to push around the chairs, but then also to squeeze the ball between, so the dogs really have to work against resistance. So you're trying to build up resilience in your dog and have them think it's fun to push against resistance, as opposed to, oh, this is stupid. Why isn't it moving? It's not acting the way I want it to. So I will change the orientation of the chairs and how tightly they squeeze the ball and how hard it is for the dog to get the ball out, depending on the dog and what they need and can handle.
Fun. All right, so we've got the chairs. Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, I do basically the same thing. I just use two folds. I have a lattice gates that are about the same size as the ball, one on each side. And then I use the sides of jumps as well, agility jumps. So the little winged jumps that I'll shove into the side of the ball. So again, the dog has to go out. Where's the camera? The dog has to go out around the ball, right? So yeah, same concept, just different. I hadn't seen it with the chairs, but very cool.
Mhm. Any other thoughts about getting started for your average dog with pushing and resistance? Props for resistance?
We have teacup tunnels, so we've used that because it gives a longer stretch that they have to push through.
I'm trying to picture, I don't know what you mean. Can you describe a teacup tunnel?
Oh, so 2 tunnels, yeah. So whether they're regular tunnels or not, but 2 tunnels on either side. So you have like a long gauntlet, and then they have to push through. So if you squeeze them tighter, they have more resistance, but they have to continue pushing versus like a one push and done.
Fun.
When you started saying that, I was thinking you meant they go through the inner part of the tunnel as opposed to tunnels on the sides.
Well, we've done that
Just
as a fun game, but not, yeah, just as a game, not as a push exercise.
Well, then we thought we'd talk a little bit about like really gentle pushers or sensitive dogs, because that can be a challenge for some dogs. Every dog's different. And when working on grass, I usually use stabilizer rings, but with the gentle pushers, that's even too much for them to deal with if I start with, even 14 inches between the balls. So as well start without any stabilizer rings, with a lot of space between the balls, even starting kind of in a straight line and just the balls just touching, kind of like the chairs, but it's just balls that are squeezing the other ball. And so that's one game one way to kind of modify to make it super easy for those dogs that are really hesitant to push. Any other like ideas for sensitive dogs?
Kyla has
I don't have
one.
an idea. No, I don't have an idea. I have a question though. Some of you with smaller dogs or lighter pushers, I've seen several dogs that will take the point ball around the group, or fish out balls so that they know to work towards the outside so they don't have to push them through as many. Is that something you've specifically taught or had ways of teaching, or have they just discovered that themselves? And if it's for
I call
later,
them
that's
pickers and pushers. I call them pickers and pushers. And it's funny, some of my little dog Larson used to be pushing through the formation, but as the formation got bigger and bigger, he turned into a picker. And he would just pick him off the formation and bring him in. So I taught him nothing of that, but it was interesting to see how that morphed as the balls increased. Anyone else train that?
I know in ATA that used to be their style, dog coming in from the side and pushing the point ball sometimes through, I guess, and sometimes around. So I was curious about that.
Cool. All right, Lisa, you wanted to talk about ball movement, rebound conditioning, and building resilience and confidence.
Yeah, I have this one little dog of my own who is fine with pushing a ball, but if that ball moves in some unexpected way, he's like, whoa. So we did a lot of going in our hallway and pushing. So I wanted it to be a really tight area. I wanted the ball to hit a lot of things, and he got paid for not pushing, but when the ball banked off of things or moved weird, it was cookies, cookies, cookies to help get him over whoa, the ball's doing weird things. That's one of the games I play. Does anyone have any games like that for real sensitive pushers?
Okay.
Cricket.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
I never thought of that. Yeah, no, I like the idea. I never thought of that. So thanks for the idea.
Yeah, and mainly what I do is just make the resistance less and then even up the value of the rewards. Like, okay, if a dog is hesitant to push, they're going to get steak for pushing, from your hand, basically, rather than a Charlie bear. So
Yeah.
make it worth
And
their
this
while.
dog is, like I said, is fine with pushing. It's just when the ball doesn't act the way he expects, that's not cool.
Right, right.
He
I
expects it
just
to move away from him.
I just wanted to add that from my end, there's nothing that says the dog actually has to use the nose either. I do have one large collie that was just resistant to pushing, so he kind of puts the ball between his front legs and just walks it back. Right, the head is over the top of it to kind of help steer it in one direction or another, but it is not a push. It's just a stroll back. So kudos for him for being creative.
I think we have a number of dogs who do that. We have a number of dogs who, in our area, who push with their front legs, and it just speaks to you have to pay attention to the dog in front of you if they don't want to use their face. It's not that it's wrong. So if we get too focused on, oh, they've got to use their head and try to force things, well, you got to be flexible. And especially the more straight front dogs will tend to use their legs instead of their head. So it's not uncommon.
Has anybody intentionally taught chest pushing to a dog? Like teaching them to bring their head over and actually use their chest to push?
No, but my dog
it.
just does that. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Christine.
I'm sorry. I was going to say I have a collie too, a rough collie. So his front chest hair just kind of rolls that ball along, but he'll use his head, his face from side to side to guide the ball. But again, I'm only in the beginning, learning all the stuff on the website, which is great, by the way. So he enjoys pushing the most, but that's on flat surfaces. I work in hallways in the home. I don't have a fenced yard, so he has to be on a long lead. And God forbid he steps on that leash, then he's like, oh my God, I stepped on the leash. And he's so sensitive, he stops. So I have to do a lot of encouragement. I have one place that's a enclosed cement pavilion, covered pavilion, and I can let him loose in there. So we're starting to work on there. But my problem is trying to find a yard because he's so worried about the grass and trying to give it a heave ho to push it out of the grass. So we're still working on that.
Good, good. Yeah, it's hard to work on long lines for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hope you can find a good location soon.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
All right, let's see. Then using gates. This is also Lisa's idea. You want to talk about using gates for teaching pushing?
Yeah, when I have dogs that are having a difficult time figuring out, oh, this one's perfect. This dog here is Jamesy, and he loves to push the ball to his right. He'll station in front of the blue ball, but then when she asks him to push, he'll just move up a step and go into the purple ball, always on his right-hand side. So we started putting up some gates so that he had to push the blue ball and stay with the blue ball, which another added benefit to this was those purple balls tend to move in a predictable manner away, which helps him focus on that blue ball, because he also will, if the purple balls look more interesting, will go and switch over to a purple ball. So this is really helping him stay focused.
Cool. That was a great video. Thanks. All right. Anybody have any more ideas about the beginning, getting started with pushing?
Sure. I would just throw out there and say I use gates just the same because when the dog first starts to push, he doesn't necessarily understand that they're pushing the ball to you. It's almost like they're pushing the ball out of the way to get paid. So with gates, you can really kind of help the dog learn how to control the ball that's in front of them. On the same fashion, before we ever started pushing a ball, I had Jet pushing a little toy car. It was a little wooden car, and because we used the car, it could only go one direction. She couldn't push it to the side. She would just flip it. So really trying to teach her how to get her head low and push on something besides a ball before we ever moved it to the actual ball itself. Kind of the same concept, directional
It
pushing.
is. Yeah, cool.
I'm still waiting for someone to go, I have the perfect game that always solves everything. Anyone? Anyone?
You're going to keep waiting.
I have it, Lisa. No, just kidding. I had a fence set up that was even easier than that one because I was taking some online classes and I was wanting my dog to push the point ball, but I didn't want to get too far ahead and mess her up. So I actually built X pens with little exterior places for the other two balls to be, just so she could see the setup but not be able to make a mistake because I had them actually protected by the gate. So she wasn't really getting any resistance. She was just practicing going to the point ball, being rewarded, and then occasionally pushing it through that picture before the other balls were let loose. So
Awesome.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
picture that.
we go to great lengths to help our dogs.
I do have a picture of it somewhere, but
Oh
basically
yeah.
it was, let's see, area for the point ball up above, and then I did the X pens that came out, and then the other two balls rested in those side pieces, and then there was another tunnel to bring the doll. So she was practicing bringing it to me, like Eric said, but not having the extra distraction of those other balls rolling at all at first.
So just was there a space then between like the two X pen edges for the ball to come straight through?
Yes, there's
Okay.
basically a channel for the ball with two extra little alcoves to the side where the balls rested so she could see the picture, but she couldn't. Yeah, like that. Thank you, Lisa. So she could see
That's
the.
what
Yeah, I
I
like that a lot.
interpreted what you were saying. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm like,
oh
oh, I
Yeah.
wait,
like
hold
that.
that up again, Lisa. Okay. Oh, I see. That was not what I was picturing. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah, to
We
find ways to
described that
make the
very
dog
well.
successful. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
that's
that a
really
lot.
we'll add that in. Awesome. Anything else, guys? All right, let's build. Build on the clock game. Oopsie, I keep forgetting to press the button. There we go. All right, so adding cues to the clock game. So some of you have been here a while. Some of you guys are new. There was some years ago, the moment when we all realized that we needed a special cue. Many of us felt that it was important to have a special cue for point ball. And so I think that's probably what most people are doing now is using a special cue for the point ball to make sure that they're distinct between going out to a single ball or when you're doing directionals, that they're really clear that that what we're asking for is to go to the point ball. So anybody want to talk about their special cue and their thoughts about it?
So
No
new to
one.
this
There we
all,
go.
but I am teaching them the point ball and pretty successfully. When I tell them to go to the point ball, I do make a little point with my hands, little, and tell them point, go point.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Super.
Does anybody have a cue for when they're on the right ball, like a there or a, a stop or something when they're on the correct ball? It could cross over into balls in order, but
Yes.
or is it just
I
just an away or?
No,
When
I let people pick their own words, but yeah, a number of ours folks have very specific words that mean stop. That's the one right there. Everything from yes, there. I've heard a lot of different words, but exactly that to tell them stop that ball.
Yeah, Eric, I just use the yes. So when my dog's closer, I see her eyes are on it, I will just say yes and cue her.
All right. Yeah, I've been trying to think. I think I say there, but I don't know. I need to watch a video.
See what you do.
But yeah, because I have noticed if I send her like on the away or something, she'll keep going counterclockwise. So I have to have a cue that lets her know which ball is actually the correct ball. So I think it's there. And then she stops and looks at me like, this is the one. And then I say push. So yeah, thank you guys.
What I find works with Maddie because she's loud. Hang on. Here.
right on cue.
She disagreed with what I was about to say. Um, because she is likely to go whipping past the ball, whether it's the point ball or the next ball to push. When she starts heading for the right ball, before she gets to the middle of that ball, I just say line up, and she's like, so that I guess is my word for yep, you got the right ball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But maybe if you for a slower dog that might not work so well.
Yeah. So when
I guess
I'm
it doesn't matter what the cue is as long as the timing is appropriate, right? So
right.
Yeah, and that's on me, the handler.
So, when we're playing the clock game at the very beginning and we're first adding the cue, I instruct people to toss the reset cookie. The dog eats it, turns and re-engages, and is already heading into the position that they know they're going to get their cookie at behind the point ball. And right as they lift their head and head into position, that's when I would say my point cue, whether it's center or point are the two most common that my students are using. So that cue, as you move away from the ball and as your tosses are farther away, that cue is happening when your dog is well away from the formation. It's saying go get into position at the formation. And then you might also have a second cue, a different cue that would be the one that you guys were just talking about. That would be, yep, confirmation. That's it. That one that you're behind, maybe. And thoughts about the timing of the cue being when the dog for a formation when the dog is away from the formation versus approaching it.
I think it really depends on the dog. Some dogs need it a little closer to the formation, and some dogs need it a little bit earlier to get into their mind, like, what am I going to do? So I call it the Goldilocks principle. Are we too, we too early, we too late, or we just right?
Mm-hmm. So if you call out point when the dog is approaching, say, the row 2 ball and they stop, how would you problem solve that, Lisa?
Then I would think to myself, oh, I'm doing it too early, or I'd backtrack and redo the training of it. Like for example, in agility, there are some dogs that are very literal, that if you tell them jump right, you're saying take the jump and then go right, but some dogs just hear it and then do it right then. So that's what I mean about the Goldilocks principle, trying to figure out what's the best timing for your dog. You need to tell them in enough time so that they can prepare their body to stop, but not too little time that they can't stop, or too much time where they're like, I don't know what you're even talking about. I don't see a formation yet.
Right. Cool.
Some of that really depends on a lot how they're being trained. And Lisa, you're kind of leaning toward that. We have dogs that they really understand their job, and so they can be sent from the moment they're sent. Come by or away, center, and they're going to go out and do it. Versus some dogs are more dependent on the hearing the word to know, oh, they need to do that thing. So the timing. They're counting on that timing, kind of giving them the heads up of where exactly they should stop. So depending on how your dog's what their understanding is, that can make a difference too on their timing, on the timing you need to do.
Yeah.
Along with that timing, I'm working on sending my dog to like different objects. And I've always used a precursor word. I'll say like, and there. So he knows when I start saying and, he kind of slows down and he waits to see what's the next word. Again, I haven't done 3 or more balls yet. I'm just working on different objects. But for me, that seems to work because he knows another cue is coming and he starts to pay attention and he slows down.
Fun.
It sounds like I'm pretty much in the minority, but I actually don't have a point ball cue. So far, this is only my 4th dog to train Treibball, but so far, the context cues are enough for my dogs. You get a formation your first go, so you have all of that and all of those environmental cues of getting started, and it's the first send, and the balls are in formation, and I just heavily reinforce it in training all the time. So if I have balls in formation and I send my dog on a directional to go by or away, I expect them to go to the furthest ball. And if that's not what is actually needed, then I add other cues to them, for them, like in snooker or something, if it's something different. So I don't know. I guess they just got it. So I guess I just didn't feel it was necessary because they saw the formation and knew that they were going to get rewarded for the furthest one.
So you're definitely onto something, and I would counter that, and I would say that if the verbal cue is messing your dog up or confusing your dog, then maybe we don't have the behavior down that we think we do to begin with, and we need to go back to the very beginning and, just like you said, heavily pay on that lineup. Right? Reset, heavily play on that lineup, reset. Can we get it to a point where the dog doesn't care about you or what you're saying? They're going to that lineup. And that's where we kind of come back and say the dogs, I mean, they got to be at least 80% successful before we start adding verbal cues to begin with, because we could really, really easily poison the cue. So, yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what's going on there. So,
yeah.
kudos.
I agree, Eric, with everything you're saying, that there's a good chance you need to go back and retrain if you're so dependent. Retrain.
Hey, everybody heard that she agreed with me, right? That's on video.
I agree with you all the time, Eric.
I'm just kidding. You know I love you.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And Kyla, I agree. I always want everybody to teach going out and really focusing on going out behind the furthest ball. I think it can start to degrade for some dogs, though, when depending on your B&O or your snooker game, where again it's a balance of what do you play. If you play a whole lot, and a lot of times with B&O it turns out, well, you're actually stopping them frequently on these closer balls to bring in, or in snooker you're playing the closer balls a lot. You got to remember their reinforcement histories is coming to be those closer balls. So then you end up needing to really reinforce going back out again. So suddenly dogs start thinking, nah, it's just these close balls. So again, it depends on how much you're playing and what you're playing a lot of times with the dogs. And then you have to go back and reinforce. No. In general, though, I want you going out around to the furthest. So we play a lot of that. Lisa mentioned, or no, someone else mentioned putting the balls on the numbers. I think Eric did. And then we call it a circle game, where you're in the center. And so we'll go back to keeping the dog out, playing the circle game. Again, going back to reinforce without just talking about the point ball, getting out and going out to the furthest first.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we've kind of jumped ahead a bit. Let's see if there's anything we missed here. Adding distance from the point ball slowly to ensure confidence. Fading the mat. We haven't talked about using mats and fading mats much at all. Fading the mat slowly, taking it away, putting it back 25% of the time to start with removing the mat to keep the confidence high. Fading with short distances, bringing it back with longer distances. Anybody have thoughts on fading the mat? Well, we have a whole Clubhouse chat on it, but quick thoughts.
Well, I probably won't hit on anything as far as fading the mat goes. I just wanted to point out that sometimes it's a lot easier to use a climb or something that's elevated as well, right, for the dog. So, but yeah, fade slowly.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to bring it back in when needed. Longer distances, changing stuff, like help your dog.
How do you use the climb? My dogs love the climb, but how do you use that? Because it is so elevated.
Just instead of, so with the mat, it's very, very similar mat placement, right? The climb is elevated, but you're still trying to teach the dog to get on that climb, to circle around, orient themselves to you, and then pay them, right? Pay. Once they realize that they can leave your side, jump on the climb, turn around, orient themselves to you, just put a ball in the way, put a 5-gallon bucket in the way, put something in the way. So now they're going around to the climb and lining up in a nice lineup, come to balance position.
And it's easier to use a climb without the legs as opposed to
Yeah.
with the legs, or using a cane board.
Yes, I don't put the legs on it. So good point, Lisa.
All right. Any last thoughts on feeding positions for building on the clock game?
I think that was referring to making sure you're paying a lot on the mat, or tossing it if your dog is kind of inching in, or really looking at what your dog needs, because reinforcement placement can really help or hinder a behavior.
Hey, and everybody cut yourself some slack. We're not perfect every time. We throw a cookie, ain't you gonna go where we want it to every time. So we do the best we can.
Amen.
And I think sometimes we might accept a little bit of, oh, they touched the ball with their chest while they were getting a cookie for this. But I think feeding directly over the ball, in fact, having them lean into the ball a little bit sometimes kind of helps them transfer that, kind of helps fade the mat, because the ball is such a huge environmental cue that I found it fairly easy to transfer the mat behavior to the ball, because it's just so obvious. It's not like you're having to have them go where there's nothing for them to look at. There's a really big obvious target there, and feeding over the ball really helps that, I think, like having them eat out of your hand that's on the ball itself. That's what I found with my dogs anyway.
That's interesting. So feeding actually with the dog's head coming over the ball a little bit.
And of course, you always have to balance that out. Then if you start to get them creeping in on the ball too much, then you've got to kind of, go back to feeding them away from the ball a little bit, but maybe reaching over the ball to get them that food. But I think that focus on that's where the good things come from helps transfer from the mat behavior or the target behavior to, oh, it's the ball I have to pay attention to. Got it.
Nice.
Right. I think we see a lot of variation there. Certainly some dogs, they very much transfer, oh, it's the ball, it's not the mat that's important. But yet I see other dogs that are highly dependent on that mat being there, and we have to fade it a lot slower. So and all the feeding in the world, but some dogs are more dependent on the prop, and we just have to go slower in removing it. So I see a wide variation.
Sometimes it's the handler more dependent on the prop than the dog, though, too.
All right, last thoughts on the positioning, and we'll start to look at combining positioning and pushing and how to move forward with that. So so once we're combining positioning and pushing, we're going to be thinking about, like, is the dog hesitating to push, or is the dog like crazy excited to push? And that's going to influence how often you reward for just positioning and how often you're going to have them actually do the push first before they get the cookies. So thoughts on that, anybody?
Just reiterating what you're saying, it's always a pendulum. You reinforce too much this way, then you go, oops, I need to come back this way. And then you do too much this way, I got to come back this way. So it's always moving.
Yeah, and I think the idea that especially with a more gentle pushing dog, that you may start with rewarding just 1, 2, maybe 3 pushes. If it might take them 6 pushes to break through the row 2 balls, that you're going to want to make sure that you get the reward in as soon as the dog needs it, not necessarily waiting at the beginning for the ball to get to you, though of course that's what you're going to build, but making sure that they're getting enough reinforcement for the first push or 2 if they need it. Okay.
What I've seen through several online classes is it seems like once the dog starts to be a little bit successful with pushing, the motivation for the handler to reinforce the going out to the point ball is reduced. They always want their dog to push the ball, and then so there's a drop off in the reward for the point ball, and then that starts to go. I mean, it's always going to balance when you're training, but I think people could continue to reward the point ball more often, even when they're learning how to push.
Yeah, Kyla, I agree with that. And even because the pushing is the reward itself. So, getting treats on top of it is great. But just even going out behind the ball and waiting, instead of just they go out and push, just having them wait and check in to see if that's the right ball. I like to reward that too, so you don't lose that behavior.
Yeah.
And that still comes back to being aware of the dog in the moment. I've got dogs that are very reinforced initially by pushing, but then when the formation gets bigger, takes a lot more pressure. I've had dogs where it actually became even maybe somewhat aversive pushing, and they want to start picking it off. So rewarding them coming through becomes a big deal. We have to do a lot of things to make it positive. So then it isn't so important that they're back there. It's that it's pushing through. So again, you got to watch what is it that we really need to be reinforcing for that dog.
Yeah, I agree. So then kind of the next thing to think about is that we're going to be kind of adding a send to our point ball, like having our dog leave our side, which includes the walking onto the field and the leash off. Kind of we can lump those a bit together, of course, split them first. But since I'm noticing that we're running out of time, Lisa, you wanted to talk a little bit about the pattern, building a pattern for a start routine.
Yeah, it's really important in a lot of sports that we have kind of a start line or a start pattern or routine. It helps us with our nerves. It helps our dogs with their nerves. So I tend to, when I go in, always put my leash in a certain location, always start my dog from a certain spot. And that becomes kind of one of the cues to know, hey, we're doing that formation thing and we're going all the way out to the point ball. And um, what else do I want to say about that? Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Karen?
So, Lisa,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say like you get a start line routine. I'm wondering as I'm doing these things too, do you have one side that you prefer to send them out first? Like, I
For
like
my dogs, yes.
start from the right consistently first because he likes that, even though he
Uh-huh. I
can go
mean,
left.
yeah, and we tend to see that they have a side that they're a little bit better at than the other. So I tend to, for my dogs, use whatever side they're better at for my point ball, for my initial send out. But I always remember I need both sides to be really positive and really strong because balls aren't always going to be on the right or always on the left.
Yeah, so train both sides, but when you're actually filming or competing, use their best side.
Yeah, the motto of that I've always used is we trial to our strengths, but we practice to our weaknesses. Never forget, right?
I think if there was any possibility for me to be doing in-person competitions, I'd probably pay more attention to that than I do just doing the home video stuff because I can go out there and reward my dog at the point ball before the cameras start rolling, and you don't know that. so, I have a little advantage there.
Yeah,
But
well,
I
that's
think I would be paying a lot more attention to that if I was looking at in-person competition.
a good point. All right, any more thoughts about combining positioning and pushing, or last things you want to get in before you run out of time? It looks like we're going to have to do a part 2 for challenges and working it up into the higher level games. Let's burning questions or thoughts.
I just want to say thank you. This has been awesome. So bring on part 2. That'll be great.
Yeah, Ellen.
Like, who's
Did
Ellen?
Ellen raise her hand? Go ahead, Ellen.
I'm coming. I'm coming. I just wanted to say thank you also. I appreciate this a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. All right, well, we were going to ask for ideas for the next Clubhouse chat, but I guess the next Clubhouse chat needs to be a point ball part 2. So, but as you're, if you're thinking about ever have any ideas of things you'd like to hear about, have a topic that you'd like to have covered, we're going to be more regular with these going forward. So just shoot an email to info@nationaltreibball.com, I believe. And that would be just the easiest email to remember, and it'll get passed on to the right person. Super. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it so much. It was really fun.
Grateful to you all.
Thank
Thank you.
Ba-doop, 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 ba-doop. Aaron. Erin.
Yeah.
Erin, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I sent you an email.
Oh, okay. Let me look.
Basically, it's asking you, do you know what the heck is up with APDT? Have you
Didn't I
heard anything?
respond?
What should we be doing? I didn't see a response. Let me
Oh.
look. Maybe you did.
Okay, maybe I thought maybe I typed something up and didn't hit send, but